Welcome to the MMHP in the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history. Recorded live from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located inside the Bay County Historical Museum.
From the city by the bay.
Featuring Dr. J, Fred Reif, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker. Brought to you by the 989 Podcast Network and the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Bay County Historical Society Museum at 321 Washington Avenue, Bay City, Michigan.
And we're back here with part two of Mr. Andy Reid here at the MMHP in the 989. We want to thank all of our listeners for all the great feedback and input they've given us. A lot of YouTube video hits too. We appreciate every single one of you who reach out via your favorite podcast way, and to check out all of our links and all of our different areas that we try to tackle, whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Amazon. All of you, even when I post the link on X, which was formerly Twitter, you all come through for us. And a lot of people have dug up the Andy show, and Andy's fan base has definitely grabbed a hold of it, and we thank you immensely for tuning in to the MMHP in the 989. So without further ado, here's where we left off with Andy Reid from the MMHP in the 989.
I thought, well, why don't I put this out on like Facebook. I said, for $250 you send me an acoustic guitar and your voice and one of your songs, and then I'll play the drums, I'll put the whole band on it, I'll mix it and send it back for $250. So now I'm working with people from Wisconsin. Now I'm working with people from North Carolina. And then that guy from North Carolina came up for 10 days to do a record. So it's like with the internet, it's like, thank God we get this free promotion. It's like everybody bashes Facebook, but man, I'd have a desk job if it weren't for Facebook.
It's a great way to get the word out.
Yeah, it is. Sure. Yeah, and it's just like, and the beautiful part about it too is like, if you do good work and people are happy with their product, it's like they'll promote you for you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's your best promotion is other people. Right. And so thankfully, the people I've worked with have done an awesome job spreading the word for me. And that's super grateful for that.
That was great coming out of the Amy Petty bit, because people will come to town wonder who to go to, and they want to always ask about you. But around the same time, Andy, well, even before that, we could bring up Tape Op as a magazine, but you started going to Tape Op conventions, which opened up his door to the big producers that know him. Now he's on the Grammy names of Andy's on the names of all those Grammy award-winning producers, because he's making these treks annually down to these conventions. And tell a little bit about that.
The nerd conventions, those are our Star Trek conventions. No, it's just a bunch of music people that. And Welcome to 79 is a great studio in Nashville, and they every year they have this recording summit, and I got asked to be on a panel one year about home recording. So I went down there to check it out and just met, these incredible like heroes of mine, like guys like Chris Shaw, who did the Weezer Blue album and mixed the Verve Pipe record and did 2 Bob Dylan records. And I'm just sitting here having a drink with Chris Shaw, it's one of my heroes. Well, now, 5-6 years later, I'm mastering records that he's mixed, and just like we're working together, and we're and people like Ryan Freeland who and the nice part about these people, I should say first and foremost, is that I can ask them the geekiest question of all time, and they will sit there and give me a 30-minute answer, and I just love it. So that first panel I did, I was with a mastering engineer named Kim Rosen, and she's my go-to mastering person. We worked together on 6 or 7 projects this year already. And so I've developed these relationships with all these different engineers and recording people from across the country. And Vance Powell's another one. He's a great guy. He does Chris Stapleton's records. Recorded a couple Jack White albums. He's out with Fish, doing their. They broadcast a video every show that fans can go log in and watch Fish shows at live, and he mixes the audio for those. So just all these great people, and that's the best part. Is like they're just great people. And oddly enough, it seems like most of them are from the Midwest that have ventured out. There's just something about that, hardworking, passionate people, and they don't mind sharing their gift with people who are interested. And so met a lot of great people through that.
Yeah, people from the Midwest seem to be generally friendly.
Yeah.
More friendly than people from the coast.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
It's a Midwestern thing.
It kind of is, yeah. But I met some great people. You know,
you don't want to generalize too much.
No. But it's just funny. But there is a thing, and but I feel like music makers. There are people that the type of producer and audio workers that these kinds of conferences attract are people that are just in it for the art. You know, they're not in it for the Grammys. They're not in it for and although they've won a lot of them, but like people like Susan Rogers, who was Prince's engineer for Purple Rain, and now she's a college professor at Berklee School of Music. You know, just people who are just so into the idea and the craft. And I just walk away like, oh my gosh, I got another year to try all these great new ideas. And so that's just been every year. I think I've gone for 10 years now.
Yeah.
I've been a panelist 3 times and just gone as a attendee for like 7.
So imagine all these. Let's put this into perspective for our podcast listeners. Mm-hmm. You guys hear a Nashville recording. We're going to record in Nashville. We did our album in L.A., and then we're going to Nashville. We did New York City back in the day, but now we do Nashville. Yeah. Well, Nashville comes to Andy now. And let's be straight up about that. That's what's happening. People are branching out because there's so much going on. They know that they can count on this guy up north, and you are part of that crew, man. And I'm so...
Oh, thanks.
I so think that's the greatest thing.
Oh, that's very cool.
It's flattering. It's still flattering, and I feel like that it's like there are so and you got to remember the last 10 to 15 years. There's been an explosion in home recording, technology, everything. So people, you know, Billie Eilish is making records in her brother's bedroom that sound fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, and so I feel like the bar, like the playing field's been evened a little bit. There's a ton of people who can make a ton of great records, but I feel like your selling point at this point is like who you are as a person and how you are as a collaborator. That's more important than how much gear you have or what microphones you have or all that other crap. It's like, how are you with people? How are you? And being a musician first, I know I can relate to what someone's going through when it's their first time in the recording studio, and I can see their hand shaking when they're doing their first take, and just being like, you know, hey, let's just do a practice run. I'm not going to record it. Just sing through it a couple times, and then we'll record in a minute, you know, and then just seeing the, you know, those little tricks of just making people feel comfortable, and that's been the nice part about getting feedback from people is that. Man, it was so nice to work with you. I never felt nervous, or I never felt like we were in a recording studio where I was under a microscope, and that makes me feel good because I know how nerve-wracking it can be in the studio. I've been in bad sessions before where people running the sessions are just not good human beings, and it's like it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah, you're not going to do anything good if you're intimidated.
No, and you know there used to be those types. You know, I'm sure like the Phil Spectors back in the day, and he got great results, but he had a short window, and then of course he was crazy and murdered a woman, and but he. You know, he had that presence. And like I said, I feel like even in the 70s, you know, I think Lennon was kind of like his last great friend because no one else wanted him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
He just did those early Lennon records.
Yeah.
And he kind of burned all his bridges. I mean, he was the biggest thing in the 60s, you know? So I feel like, you know, if you take your, you know, respect the people in front of you and in the room with you and treat their art as if it were your own, and going in with that kind of mentality has made it so you have returning clientele and all that stuff. That's the biggie for sure.
Having you on the show was able to finally ask Freddie this question. I've always wanted to ask you about. You were doing home recording in the basement of your record store on Washington, Black Kettle Records.
Yeah.
And Black Kettle Records was your label. And how is it Kohut that you had the 45?
Yeah. Well, John basically took care of that part.
Was this in the late 70s?
75 to 77.
Okay,
Then I moved it to Saginaw.
Okay, and you did it in the basement of your record store?
In the Davidson building.
Yeah?
Nice.
We did the George Heriter.
You did 45. the 3rd Street Bridge, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest ones out of this area. And how did you go about that back then, Fred? It was all obviously reel to reel, but how did you go?
Well, we had a TAC 3340S.
Okay.
I think it was.
Yep.
Reel to reel. That was it. Like I said, John took care of all of that. We had John Kilborn. He was our engineer.
John Kohut and John Kilborn. John Kohut was the singer of the song that you have the 45 that's collectible out there, outside of George Heriter's one.
Right.
But you recorded more than them two.
Ron Lopez.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, John did.
Yeah.
Because I don't know whatever happened to all
Yeah, you
those
said
tapes.
you were missing a lot of stuff.
I have, when we moved, well, before we had it there, we had it in Saginaw, John Kohut and I.
Mm-hmm.
And I recorded my bluegrass band that I was in, Beantown Valley Ramblers.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
we
That is a
transferred
great
it
band
to your
name.
house.
It's a great band name.
And all I did was turn on the tape.
Okay. Well, I mean, you were.
This
This is
real.
great to hear home recording stuff going on back then in the basement of record stores, a record store.
Right.
You know.
Well, I think the more weird story is in the 1990s, in Ann Arbor, when I was working with the Caribbean band, Steve Springer, about 5 or 6 of his albums were done in the kitchen of his little townhouse. And he had tracks. They put it on my label, but I don't
Kids
know.
Records?
But
Did it come out on Black Kettle then?
Yeah.
Oh, it was Black Kettle. Oh, okay.
But they'd send it to somebody in another Caribbean guy in Australia, and then he would put his part on it. He'd send it to Trinidad. Somebody from there would put their part on it.
Like you're sending the legit reel of tape, you're saying, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
It
had
just
to have been.
amazes me.
It had to
how-
have been, right? Yeah, because
That
that
was
was
early
the
90s?
medium.
Yeah.
But he was doing we got Steve Nardella to come in to blow some harp. And Steve goes, well, I can't play that Caribbean music, So we just said, play over it. Just play whatever you feel. And there's a video. It's on YouTube, and it sounds all right. It kind of changes to more bluesy, but fits right in.
And you were at School Kids Records when you were in Ann Arbor too, and they had a little.
We had
schoolhouse
66
or something?
releases.
That's awesome.
And they recorded it all in the schoolhouse out there or something, or little.
Well,
house
the ones that we did live,
Mm-hmm.
most of them, Steve, the owner, leased them. They were already done.
Yeah.
Like Scott Morgan,
Mm-hmm. Scott's Pirates, yeah.
Scott's Pirates. We put out 2 different ones.
Yeah.
But I think those were done at Henry Weck's Schoolhouse Studios.
Okay.
It's funny how the traditional recording studio, there's still some out there, but that sterile, perfect acoustic thing is almost unflattering now because you have these records with character, in my opinion. Like, I don't have a perfect studio at all. If you look at Rancho de la Luna, which is in Joshua Tree. It's a small studio where Queens of the Stone Age and Caius did all those, and you have even like Abbey Road has character, obviously, but that's the only room that sounds like Abbey Road.
Jonathan Wilson.
Yeah, Jonathan Wilson has a great studio. It's like, but I feel like the home. I mean, think about like McCartney's first solo record. He recorded that at his home on a Scottish farm with a 4-track, and it's like, I don't know.
That was some of the earliest inspiration for you.
Yeah.
I mean, and me, of course. But like you would go back and go through. That was cut at home. That was cut at home, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I got to snap those records up so I can hear what they're doing at home because we can do this now.
Right? Yeah, and it's just there's so much more charm to that, in my opinion. Obviously, you're never gonna get an orchestra to sound better than if you're in a beautiful hall. But that's that kind of music. Like an orchestra in a beautiful concert hall is going to sound better than in my basement,
Right.
But
a few years ago, I got from Marty Kempf all those wire recordings. I can't believe, because I transferred most of it on my computer and then onto a CD, but I can't believe the sound that came out of that. I mean, it's a wire.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. There's tons of like old, Woody Guthrie wire recordings and just all that stuff that's still being found and transferred. And it's just, and you got to think about the history of recorded music only goes about 120 years. So we're still kind of in our infancy with this. Exactly. You know what I mean? So it's just such a beautiful, like, endless possibilities, and the crazy thing that's tougher now, I feel like, is that I always say this, it's like there's so many options for younger producers and songwriters. I feel like the limitations we had coming up helped us like figure it out and learn the craft of engineering and learn the craft of recording, where there's a lot of things now where you can just plug a microphone and sing into it and then try to fix it later. You know what I mean? Where we were just trying to get it down in the moment. Yeah. And but I feel like that's kind of losing a little bit of steam, like the traditional mic placements, and if you move it closer, it's bassier, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I still get some interns and stuff coming in, which is fun to see young kids excited about the craft and, teaching them some of the older ways. I mean, I'm not even, I feel like the old guard are people like Glenn that just lived it and knew it. And I'm kind of like the half and half, I love the new technology and I love the old technology.
Well, in my first book, I have a picture that Nelson Bitterman took. He was the drummer with Gerald Marks, who wrote All of Me. But it's a picture of a Columbia recording studio in Chicago, and they all played to a horn. Big horn.
Yeah, and then it wrote on the lacquer. Yeah, oh yeah. That's the birth.
No, that's old.
That's the birth of recording. Yeah. A friend of mine, Mark Rubel, who passed away last year, someone I met in Nashville, he was the one that started the Blackbird Academy, which is that engineering school at Blackbird, which is John McBride's studio. Mm-hmm. It's like the studio in Nashville. And he would bring in that whole thing and show his students the horn, and they'd have to sing into it and play into it, and they'd cut it, and I love that people still. It's cool, how do you know where you're gonna go if you don't know where you came from, right?
It's the thought process too of the home recording, how it is easier to edit and all this stuff, but what can we bring in from the old stuff to give that vibe? Mm-hmm. And I remember Andy's main word, it was the same word as I heard at Dick's. It was like, we gotta get a vibe. Vibe comes from the accidents. Mm-hmm. Vibe comes from the mishandled things, and or just going back to some old thought process and bringing it in. And I remember you were like early on really wanting to mix the tape into the digital, and I'm like, man, this is going to be so cool. But now it's like we're well past that time period now too.
Yeah,
so.
and it's like you can get very beautiful tape sounding albums out of a computer. Absolutely. Yeah. But you got to be disciplined enough to not tune the vocal to where it sounds like a robot singing it, like with auto tune and stuff like that. To me, that's the stuff that makes it sound cheap and computery. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, a lot of that in pop music.
Right. Correct.
Days,
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's hard to listen.
The
to.
vocal thing, and another thing, like Warren Haynes is synonymous with talking about click tracks.
Yeah.
If most stuff is click tracks, so everything sounds mapped out and accurate, and like a song, every song has the same groove, especially when you turn on the country channels or something. You got the same. It's just it's all, you can hear the map. It's just everything's segmented in and where it needs to go. Robotic. There's no natural flow, no Motown, no vibe, no breathing. It's lost its heartbeat, and part of Andy's initial thing, and I'm 100% behind, is going as organic as you can on these records with as minimal much of touching up as you can.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like what you're saying too, it's like, we're human beings, we're imperfect people, and we've tried to make perfect music, and I feel like we don't feel that as much as we feel. Like if you look at, I was like the reference of Honky Tonk Woman. If you listen to Honky Tonk Woman, and I actually sat here with the metronome and mapped it out, it's 20 beats per minute faster at the end of the song than it is at the front. You don't hear it speed up. It's just Charlie Watts just kind of keeps going a little bit faster, and by the end of it, it's just like they're just ripping. And it's if you play Honky Tonk Woman to a click track, it sounds awful. You put a Zeppelin record to a click track, it's awful. No, it's like those that's the stuff. We have to keep the human element as much as we can in this stuff. And I feel like if we do that, we'll be able to survive the digital recording thing. And and I'm not just saying it's me and Scott doing this. I mean, there are a lot of people who are, and I don't even call us purists. I just feel like we know that we want to feel that human part. We want to hear someone sing a flat note and then bend it up into the right pitch. Those little things that just like a computer can't touch. That kind of stuff. So that's important to us.
What are your top 5 records that you've recorded? If they include your own, include them.
Oh man, I don't want to get anybody mad at me.
You don't have to, because you've recorded a lot of great stuff, man. I just wonder what your favorites are, or that you would say, I really mastered my technique.
Well, I mean, I would say like definitely Amy Petty, the Darkness of Birds one is just because that was Amy and I, mostly just her and I doing that record, and we were programming drum beats and then adding real drums after, and just it was so creative and so much fun. And she's like I said, she's just one of the best, most talented people I've ever worked with. And I feel like I'm happy with that because I didn't screw it up. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I was just my one goal was just like, don't screw this up. That was my goal with that one.
That's a freaking brilliant record.
Thanks. That one, I would say the American Underdog record that I did in 2011, that was like my first
with the dog on the cover,
self-produced album that I did on tape with Mark Farner's tape machine that I got for $225 from Bill. And because I learned, I feel like that 2-year period making that album, I learned more in that 2-year period than I've learned in my life with what I was doing. So I'm proud of that one. And weirdly enough, this is so bizarre. I'll tell you a story. So 2 days ago, I got this email from this woman in Los Angeles, and she's like, are you Andy Reid, the songwriter? And I'm like, well, yeah, but, and she's like, well, I want to use one of your songs for a movie that I'm directing. And I'm like, okay, is this a scam? First thing I go to is, oh, this is a scam. Here we go. And so and I looked up the woman, and she was a legit Hollywood actress, and this was her first directorial movie. And she was looking for the standard of Beautiful Dreamer, well, I have a song called Beautiful Dreamer, but it's not the standard. And she's like, I stumbled across yours while I was looking. And she's like, I started crying. It was so beautiful. And I want to use it for the end credits. And she's like, I also got David Bowie's Life on Mars for the soundtrack. And I'm like, and I said, well, I'll take 1/8 of whatever you're paying me. No, but she was great. And then it's just like, that was an album I did, 13, 14 years ago. And this woman stumbled across it. And it's like, man, that felt so good. I wasn't, I'm not out there pushing it, trying to get my songs in movies. But when someone comes across your art and wants to infuse it in their art, it's like, oh, come on, that's the feeling. I don't even care if I get paid, I just want to see it happen.
Well, that's the beauty about being on Apple Music, which most of your music is.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you that's how she was able to hear that.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre, so that record for sure. And there was a nice moment there, and I'm sure everybody on this here is our vinyl people. And I've been collecting vinyl since about 2005 or so. I was kind of late to the party, but I was still ahead of the big boom that's reoccurred. And that album was the first time I had gotten a release done on vinyl.
Oh yeah.
And so when I got the test pressing and I played it, and that was like the first time I felt like an actual artist, because the music was in the grooves, and so that album's always going to be special.
I remember
to
you
me.
calling me up to come over to hear it. I got it today. Come over.
Yeah. I was so that album for sure of mine. I would say that one is probably a favorite. The Brett Mitchell second album we did of his, Falling Apart at the Seams. That was a fun exploration of sound. Most of it was tape. Learned a lot on that one. That was super early on. It's tough, man. Michelle O'Neill's last record, because it was Michelle, her husband Cody, Todd Miller, Lauren Kranz, and me, and it was just fun. It was just so much fun, and it was 5 people who were really stepping up their game for the other 4 people in the room. Like, they didn't want it. They wanted to do it. It was a family thing. It was so cool. And then Michelle O'Neill's voice on top of it all is like, okay.
Freddie actually fell in love with Michelle O'Neill's voice 2 review awards back when she played.
Oh yeah.
Then he goes, I liked her, Scott, and I'm like, that's cool, because Fred's pretty particular on what he likes anymore.
Yeah.
So.
No, she's amazing. Yeah. She's amazing. That whole crew is amazing. So. I feel like it's really tough to. I know I'm leaving out a ton of stuff that I absolutely love. I love everything. Yeah,
There's so much stuff.
How about if we make it easier for you? Maybe easier. How about favorite Beatle albums?
Oh yeah. Well, I was just thinking about this today, because you're a nerd. You think about what your favorite Beatle record is. I'm a White Album guy. And then I think A Magical Mystery Tour is a close second.
Wow.
And then I go back to Help. Because
of the experimentation on Magical Mystery Tour?
Magical Mystery Tour just has those perfect pop masterpieces on it. Penny Lane. Yeah. Hello, Goodbye. It's like peak McCartney. Well, then it also has I Am the Walrus,
right. Strawberry Fields Forever.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah. And that's, I forget, like the best Beatles song ever, next to A Day in the Life. So yeah, I would say White Album. And I feel like the White Album is probably because that was like the first record that I checked out at the library. And like and there is kind of like a little bit of that like home recording vibe on that record too. Mm-hmm. It's a little raw. Well, it's not as slick as
those
their other
George
records.
demos that came out later from at his house.
So good.
Sure demos.
Yeah.
Are fun to listen to.
Oh
definitely.
Man. But I mean, it's like I love every single one. Hard Day's Night. I mean, Please Please Me. And then, I mean, Abbey Road is like, to me, even though it's not my favorite Beatle record, it's one of them, but I feel like that's the most perfect Beatle record. Sounds flawless, and it's just, it's like, and it all happened in 7 years. That's the weirdest part. Yeah, exactly. Did you guys watch the Get Back documentary on Disney?
I have not gotten to that thing yet, but I did watch the the long version.
No, that's what I'm talking
the one
about.
you're talking about?
Let It Be. Not the Let It Be redo.
Okay,
I'm
the
talking
one-
about the 9-hour,
Yeah.
the Peter Jackson
it was
thing.
fabulous.
I mean, that was like me. I mean, to me, that was like, I don't even know how, I couldn't even explain it. It was about its most spiritual experience that I probably ever. It's like I get to, when he's writing Get Back on the bass, it's like, you're seeing like Leonardo da Vinci painting the Mona Lisa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're seeing it happen.
I
Oh,
love that.
God. Wow. I mean, and you know, we could go on Beatles for days, and the same with Brian Wilson. He's my other kind of huge, just you know, Pet Sounds, Smile era. That whole Brian Wilson thing is just another one of those once in a lifetime probably things that we'll ever witness. Even though it was before my time, I still feel like they're still alive, you know, and we're you know, get to experience that whole thing. We were here when that happened, and that's pretty dang cool.
I've seen you embrace Tom Petty, Fish, Black Crowes.
Yep.
From the music from more of my world, I would say, because you usually bring them up when we're around. But like Wildflowers.
Wildflowers was the record there for me. Yep, for sure.
Southern Harmony.
Yeah.
Feel
Oh
the
man,
breeze.
did you see the Brendan O'Brien interview with Rick Beato?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Brendan O'Brien is the end all be all '90s like producer, like the guy. Yeah. You know, he did Pearl Jam's second record, and he played the solo.
I didn't know that.
And me neither did I. On
Jealous Again.
Was it Jealous Again?
Or no, the
Hard to Handle.
Hard to Handle. Yeah.
Because they left the solo open because they were gonna have like Slash do it, and then they ran out of time. So the engineer just says, "Well, I'll play it." And it's just the most epic solo ever.
I had no clue till I saw
and
that
it was
video.
the guy that pushing the buttons.
Yeah.
So
it was a great interview.
Anyway, but there's there's thankfully we've been around to witness some great stuff.
Well, I was hitting on your love of root rock next to pop rock.
Yeah, like Dawes. Dawes. I love. Dawes is a fantastic band. They're coming to Michigan. Mike Viola's opening.
Yeah.
Going to that. Mike Viola is a singer-songwriter.
Let's talk about the show you did with Mike.
Oh, yeah, Mike Viola. So Mike Viola is a producer-engineer from Los Angeles area. He did... have you guys ever seen that movie, That Thing You Do?
Oh, sure.
Remember that?
Certainly.
He's the
Great.
voice. That's his voice on all the vocals. Like he's the
That's my
singer.
mother's maiden name, Viola.
Viola, is it? That's awesome. It's a beautiful name.
So I wonder, is he from Naples, Italy, or?
No, he's actually from Boston, Massachusetts. So, but who knows?
Right.
You know, it's
be a
Boston.
connection there.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. So, around the time I made that American Underdog album, Mike was doing a small solo tour, and I had been a fan of his as a songwriter, but he was also a producer at the time. He kind of does what I do, but in Los Angeles. So it's like with, Panic at the Disco and Mandy Moore and Ryan Adams
at the time.
Yeah, Ryan Adams.
Ryan Adams constantly calling Andy's house to Mike going, and Mike's like, I gotta take this.
Yeah, so it was so I just sent him an album, this American Underdog record. And he's just like, "Whoa, this is fantastic. We need to do a show together." So he actually came to Bay City and we played the State Theater. We just did a show at the State Theater together. And he's this world.
What year was that?
That was 2010 maybe?
Yeah.
Around that, 2012.
9, 12, yeah.
We did it 2 years in a row.
Yep.
And we brought Steve Eggers from Canada. He's another singer-songwriter. And anyway...
Very Paul McCartney voice.
Very, very Paul McCartney. Just great guy. Yeah. So what we did is we liked each other's music, so we each picked 5 songs of our own. And then the other 2 guys learned them, and then we were each other's band that night. So we had one rehearsal before the show, and we went up and did a show. Wow. It was so much fun. And I'm up there with like 2 of my heroes, and I'm like, I don't belong here. Imposter syndrome. But yeah,
so cool, man.
Yeah, so
Donnie on drums.
Donnie on drums the second year. Yep, we added Donnie to the fold. But just like I said, that's another just one of meeting these people that are like-minded, and the same with the reason I think Mike Viola and I connected. It was the same thing. We were talking about the Beatles and the Beach Boys and all these just pop geniuses that we know and love, and that's just that's just the basis for a lot of my musical relationships with people, which is awesome. So it's like we always have that to fall back on, and what a great thing to fall back on, right?
Yes, indeed.
I was thinking about that today. I was going to put a post out there that says I could steal ideas from the Beatles for the rest of my life and never run out of ideas. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like they did so much, and it's crazy to me. But so it's just meeting all these different people along the way, and of course, like having friends like Scott since day one. It's just we've all shared these journeys, and you know, Scott's venture, and just with Warren and Larry and just all these great people. And Scott and I are working on a thing right now where with Charlie Walmsley and Steve and Larry McRae are playing on it, and Scott's doing some stuff and I'm doing some stuff. It's just we're all kind of on this weird ride together, and
our kids are near the same age too.
Yeah,
which is our families grew up together, so not together hanging out, but same time.
So we're
period.
going to be stage dads and put together a super group.
We were hanging out at
Meal
the
tickets.
Spirit a couple months ago. He invited Dylan and I to come along, and he's like, all this stuff we used to talk about and hang out with, now we're working with them. And I'm like, dude, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it just planted it right in my mind. I'm like, here we are, all these years later, we're still doing what we love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can't. Yeah, that's the weird part for sure. It's pretty fun. I'm just finally recovering from my Saginaw Spirit venture too. They just won the Memorial Cup, and my dad and I went to all 8 games.
Season tickets.
Yeah, it was so much fun though. It was so much fun.
Well, and then to have them win.
That was the fun part. Yes, that was intense, and just they beat the team that knocked them out of the playoffs before. So it's just like we were up 3-0 in that final game, and then London came back, and I'm like, here we go again, and then we scored with 20 seconds left. And it's like, oh my god, I just literally my voice is coming back like the last couple of days. I was screaming so much, but that's my dad and I have been doing that for years. So we had season tickets for a long time, and my mother passed away last year, so getting my dad out of the house is a big thing, so we just go to hockey.
It's nice that you can share that with your dad.
Absolutely. Yeah, my brother really too. Cool. My brother has 2 nieces, or I have 2 nieces. His kids are going to U of M next year. Bella is one of the girls. I taught her how to play guitar. She has this beautiful singing voice. So like Scott was saying, it's like this stuff that, and we're not dumping it on them like you have to play guitar and you have to do this, but it's like when you're around it, I feel like it's going to rub off on our kids, and I can already tell it's happening with Dylan.
Yeah, well, he wants to go out this summer, so we're working this weekend. We have rehearsal together for the first time ever.
So awesome, dude. Yeah, and that's the next step, and that's the cool thing too about like being. Yeah, I think I'm on year 18 of just doing the studio thing, and having, like I said before, interns come in and people who are interested in the craft. It's so much fun now.
There's something that's also to our listening crowd. If you have anybody interested in recording, Andy's a great person to talk to, even if you're not in our area, to guide you to an area where it would be appreciated. Not everybody knows how to do that. Some of the greatest material that Andy and I read about getting in the studio was always working as an intern back in the day. You learned how to scrub the toilets, make the coffee, answer the phone for the guys. Next thing you know, you're on the midnight shift recording their bands in the big studios. And Andy never let that go when he had his studio. He's like, not that you have to go do all that, but if you're interested at all, just reach out to Andy.
Come and hang out.
Yeah, reach out to reedrecording.com, right?
Yeah, reedrecordingcompany.com.
There it is.
And like I said, even if you're not in the area, I have so many friends throughout Michigan that have studios that are kind of in the same world. Some of them are educators. Some of them are do co-ops and all that stuff. So it's definitely a tricky thing where you can get your own home recording rig and do it yourself, and I totally encourage that. But there's also a lot of things that you can pick up from other people, and myself included. Get a tape op subscription. That's another thing.
Absolutely free.
Yep.
Free magazine delivered bi-monthly, I believe.
Yep. And that's just got articles about great producers and engineers from all over, and it's not the like I said, it's not the people making the top 40 pop hits. It's the people working with bands. It's the people working with solo artists and making albums, you know, and for the sake of the craft. And that's, like I said, that's been kind of our goal since day one. So you
get to read a lot of the stories of the musicians that worked on the East Coast and the West Coast, and how vile it could be and how beautiful it could be if given the right opportunity. But all I know is you've had a lot of people come through it. Andy's Midwest talk earlier, it's a little more kind in our world, and I think it's getting more kind as it goes on with all this home recording. If you want that opportunity to check out how to do stuff and then get your own rig, it's just involve yourself.
Absolutely. Ask questions. I mean, that's what I did, and I feel like that's such that's another understated thing. It's like, you know, all these people that we're talking about that we admire and love what they do, they're all approachable people. Like they don't mind answering a question here and there, you know what I mean? Because they love it like we love it. It's like they're music nerds like we are. So what do you think they want to talk about? Music, you know? So, oh man, there's this band I love, Spoon. They're a band from Austin, Texas, and I was out with the Verve Pipe, and we were at Austin City Limits Festival. This is so funny because I was like a 14-year-old schoolgirl. The singer was standing. We were in the artist area, and he was over there by himself having a beer. And I'm like, should I go talk to him? What if I make a fool of myself? What am I going to do? What am I going to say? You know, blah 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 blah. So just sitting here sweating because he was one of my heroes. So I'm like, okay, I finally got the nerve down. He's like, just go over there, you wuss. Come on. Like, it's not that easy, you know? And so I finally go over there, and I'm like, hey, Britt, Andy. And I said, I just got to tell you, man, I'm just a total, you know, recording record nerd, and you guys always have the most amazing drum sounds on your albums. And I just, every time I make a record, I always refer back to like how your drums sound. It's like, oh, thanks, man. We spent a lot of time. And it ended up being an hour-long conversation about this thing that both he and I loved. Yeah. And it's like I said, it's just all these people, they love what they do. And they're most of them are just flattered that people listen that intently, you know?
That's where you strike a great artist or touring artist or whatever. If you happen to stumble upon one of them, their heart lies in their art. And instead of stand in front of them with your mouth open, you ask it an intelligent question like about what they love or what you love about what they do. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to give you everything you want to know about it.
And I feel like that gap is closed too, like the relationship between artist and listener. Like it used to be like, you know, there was Kiss, and it's like you were a fan. Yep. And now it's like with the internet, you know, you can chat with them on a Instagram thing. And I feel like even more so now that the artists really appreciate the fans because they know how hard it is to get fans because there is so much music out there. So I just feel like that gap between the relationship between the listener and the artist has closed, and I like that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I think it's so great.
I think that's fun. You know,
Ryan Freeland. We were talking about Ray LaMontagne. I think one of the last records we were doing together, Community Spire or something. And I was like, man, I should friend request him because you said I just hit him up or something. Yeah. So I went on there, and of course, him and I started chatting about something. I'm like, this dude just won like 10 Grammys or something.
Yeah,
he's like, hey, what's going on, man? Oh, you know Andy? Yeah, I know Andy. Okay. And it's like, that's how easy it is, you know.
We were. It was so funny because Ryan was at the last tape thing, and we were talking about. We were in the lounge, and this is like just everybody's having fun, and he and I are talking about recording acoustic guitars, like what mics we use, and somebody interrupted Ryan. He's like, and he went, "Shut up, Andy's giving me some good stuff right now." Like, and I was just like, "Shut up, dude! You do not need to know how I make an acoustic guitar." But it's just so fun because it's just a whole nother world, and record making. You know, we've all experienced great live shows, and that's just such its own beautiful thing. You know, like being in a crowd of people and experiencing music with the band and stuff. But in the record making is just, I feel like just a completely separate thing, and it's just as beautiful, and it's just so much. And I've always just leaned towards that. You know, I kind of quit playing live a little bit more. that process just kind of.
But you'll never not be a fan of music. In
Correct.
Every which way, it's being a fan.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Just everybody has their preferences, and mine just kind of leans towards those circular black discs things.
Andy Reid, the artist, the producer, the musician, the longtime friend, the Midwestern go-to for Nashville, and close buddy of all of us here in Bay City. Thank you for being on the show, man.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Andy, it was so good.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for putting such great stuff out there. I mean, honored to be a part of this, but more so, this will probably be the only episode I don't listen to of your podcast.
That happens.
So, but I appreciate it immensely. So
Yeah, he'll hit the forward button. That's all.
Yeah, I'll share it. I'll share it for sure.
Cool.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right,
Honored. Thank you.
On behalf of our hosts, this podcast wouldn't be here without generosity of the Bay City Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. We'd also like to thank all of our guests, and especially to the listeners. The MMHP is found at 989.network, or where all podcasts can be found. You can find updated information as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Picks of the Week on Facebook. Also on Facebook, check out Mr. Mike's Local Music Live series and Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen Studios, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1.
On behalf of us hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, we'd like to thank Mr. Eddie Switek, the voice of the MMHP and the 989.